Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.
Good day. Here we are from Foreign Policy Review again. I'm CARLO PARCELLI, your host. And again today, my co-hosts are Ben Toth from Hungary and Billy Bob from the great left coast of California. And we're going to open the show with Ben explaining the difficult politics and that have led to the 500,000 protesters in Krakow, Poland. And frankly, I'm looking forward to what he has to say, because I've been reading up on the situation and I can't make heads or tails of it. Ben, take it away.
As the regional guy, the Eastern European guy, thank you, Carlo. I can tell you a bit of background because I did do some checks, and also something that contributes to my thinking is there's this Polish lady called Ania, and she has a YouTube channel, Through the Eyes Of. She's currently in Moscow, and she does some reporting on it, which very much enriched my understanding. So we had this this big protest, and everybody thought it was anti-war and anti-NATO. No, it wasn't. And by the way, it was Warsaw, I think, not Krakow. Anyway, that was earlier this week.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, massive protest. And it turns out that behind the scene, it was very much organized and financed by, there's two parties that are worth something in parliament today. Basically, with 200 seats, it's the ruling Law and Order Party with Duda and I don't know the prime minister's name out of hand, but basically his party. And the second one is called Civic Platform. And Civic Platform is led by Donald Tusk. So they have about 100 seats. There's a million other parties in Poland, by the way. There's a Polish beer appreciators party. There's Pirates party. There's joke parties, like hundreds of them, but they get like 2 to 20 seats out of 460. So they don't matter. These two guys basically are in a tussle, and that's what it's about. Basically, it's about alignment with the EU. It's not so much about that law, which we all read about, which was Duda's party introduced a law in which they can basically scrutinize, is that the right word? Check up someone's background going back 15 years in political office or near political office, who have acted in the interests of Russian, foreign policy. They could be ousted from office, which is a very scary law. You know, basically it's a purity law where you can oust your opponents. Where have we heard that before? We'll get to America, I guess, so we can talk about that. But yeah, that's what basically the protests were supposedly about. It wasn't about the war. It wasn't about Bandera or becoming this unified state with what's left of Ukraine and Lvov. It's basically how EU aligned you are, because as you know, the Polish, the new Ukrainians, the new protege of the United States, if you like, have purchased weapons for billions. They're suing Germany for reparations of 1 trillion, and the EU apparently has probed into this law. Trying. So there's the difference, between Law and Order is it's a sovereigntist kind of big Poland former glory party, and Civic Platform is very much Brussels and EU aligned. And that's what I would say this tussle was about. And the reason why they can actually more mobilize so many people is not so much giving out bribes. There's stories about that, but it's about a terrible economy and suffering. Not in least the farmers, just like in Hungary, because of the influx, but which has stopped, of cheap and subpar Ukrainian grain. So yeah, it's a tinderbox situation, but it's not really about foreign policy or anything other than are we with the EU or are we this sovereign sort of Banderite Poland? Is my current understanding of this.
And so the protesters were more on the sovereignty side or the EU side? Help me.
They're the EU guys.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
That's Donald Trump. So
the sovereignty is in power, and the EU is in power. 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 And
Yeah.
And
of course, they're both absolute Russophobes. So the people are not. This is important. I have friends both in Poland and Polish friends in America who say Putin is right. We support it 100%. We want basically the socialist Poland back, and that's where our roots are. So the people don't really vibe with this. You can see videos on Telegram where a Ukrainian guy is very upset because two Polish people tell them to fuck off because we support Putin. And he's very shocked by this, you know, in Lublin or in Warsaw. It's amazing. So it's
hard to it's hard to quantify, you know, how big the minority is that, you know, supports Russia. But for sure, there's been generations and generations of anti-Russian, you know, propaganda. Well, maybe not a lot of generations because it was just like 1990, whatever.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of time for people to become indoctrinated, you know, against their own best interests, just like is the case in the U.S. And I mean, I'm heartened to think that there's, you know, a strong minority that is rational and on the side of Russia and understands exactly what's taking place and how the West would be happy to sacrifice Polish blood next after, you know, they finish sacrificing Ukrainian blood.
Yeah. Polish and Moldovan, basically, those will be the last drops, won't they? If things continue as they do.
And whatever you think about it, if you look back in history to Lech Walesa, it's now been established through many, many diligent FOIA requests by many, many diligent unread journalists that was essentially a soft coup led by the Central Intelligence Agency and financed by the United States.
It's almost the same as Yeltsin, yes, like beat for beat.
So for me, it was kind of, to see both of these parties. There was no pro-Russian element to any of it. It was like, well, we got two of these unnecessary shitheads going head to head,
vying for power.
I was intrigued by that, and thanks for clearing that up, Ben. And
yeah, welcome. By the way, you brought up Lech Walesa, the first democratically elected, the soft guy.
Yes.
When he ran at the next election, do you know how popular he was? He got a little more than 1% of the vote. That's how much people hated
Navalny, Guaido numbers. He got Guaido numbers.
He got Guaido numbers. Yeah, Mr.
It's always the same. I mean, Saakashvili in Georgia, you know, they put these guys in power and then they just destroy everything and then they're not popular anymore. I mean, the Chocolate King, Poroshenko, same thing.
If people's lives get ruined, you're not going to be popular. And that's basically.
But the people need to wake up. They need to stop falling over and over and over for this bullshit that, you know, the CIA shoves down their throat. As far as what is it? You know, what is the enticement? It's
you're right.
Hollywood.
What happens is not just Hollywood, mostly CIA, so Radio Free Europe and these kinds of outlets are doing pressure. And as you said, 30 years of indoctrination. The same has happened in Hungary. And what was basically the message is things are bad now because of those damn communists. You might know that they fell from power and suddenly about 7 million people perished in all of Eastern Europe, which includes Russia. And Russia, the male, life expectancy dropped by something like 20 years. It was terrible everywhere, same in Poland. And the strategy is, those dirty commies did this, but wait, when we build you back up, you'll be a capitalist heaven, which never happens in Eastern Europe, which just never happened. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that when things got rough, basically Duda got drunk, and my prime minister, Mr. Viktor Orban, who is now going to Albania to do some agreements and ties, while my foreign minister, Mr. Peter Szijjártó, the rock star guy, is at SPIF in St. Petersburg, the economic forum. Basically, so he sobered up. He became a realist. You know, whatever his internal policy, our foreign policy has been spot on for the last 1.5 years, and I'm thankful in that we are the opposites of Poland.
Now, that wasn't Orban. You said that was who that went to St. Petersburg?
That was our foreign minister, which is Mr. Peter Szijjártó.
And he's been in charge of the nice foreign policy that Hungary has that has upset the EU so much.
Yeah, we're getting investments from China and from Russia. We are getting our nuclear power plant expanded by Rosatom. There's things I couldn't be gladder for, you know. While the rest of Europe
caused a visit from one of the regime change ladies. That was a few months ago. We talked about.
Yes, Samantha Power was here. Yes, we were aware and scared. Yeah. Very scary
So
times.
your foreign minister isn't the only one traveling around. There's a lot of heads of state doing a lot of things. You wanna summarize it for us?
I want to start by I just watched 2 videos, and people should seek these out because they're beautiful. China, who emerged the peacemaker in the Middle East, mediated between Saudi Arabia and Iran, who were always thought of as enemies. You can never make peace between them. After they did that, China, Xi Jinping invited and just received Ibrahim Raisi. Mahmoud Abbas, I think, the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas. And I watched the video of a reception, and this has not been done in Western Europe or in America. The full military honors, shots fired, beautiful flags, everything. He also laid a beautiful wreath at the monument to the people's heroes. And for 4 days, he was there. And out of this emerged another strategic partnership. We hear a lot about these nowadays because don't want to obscure this, but also Russia has just signed the same with the North American Algeria. Yes, the Algerian president is in Moscow with Putin signing strategic partnerships. Now the same is done with China and Palestine. And this gives me the greatest hope in the world. Obviously, Israel is scared, but what China does is diplomacy. One, Xi Jinping presented a 3-point plan and recommended full UN membership to Palestine, and I haven't heard that before. But let's look at that 3-point plan. 1, sovereign Palestine with 1967 borders and Jerusalem as a capital. Sounds reasonable to me. How long has this been? Wow. Number 2, an economy completely rebuilt with the aid of international investment and partners, basically China, Belt and Road, BRICS, you name it. And the third, the right, of course, to the right peace negotiations and the respect of all the shrines, despite religion, in the territory of Palestine. That sounds great to me. And these two meetings signal.
What year were the borders? 1970.
1967 borders.
67. That's good. I was afraid it was post Yom Kippur, so that's before that. That's good. I mean, totally will totally be rejected by Israel, but it's fair. It's an honest and fair suggestion and approach by China, so that's good.
And it's a massive breakthrough. I haven't heard anything like this in ages, and also having a Palestinian leader treated with respect that he deserves. And as a side note, this is just a funny story going around right now on I think Twitter, other social media. There was this hilarious Ryanair pilot. I don't know if you've heard this story. You haven't? And the Ryanair plane was going to Tel Aviv.
Oh, yes. The 124. Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Tell it, Carlo. Yeah.
Well, I'll just outline it. You can finish it off. Trudeau gifted it to Zelensky. It's been sitting on a tarmac for over a year because it landed in Canada with COVID.
That's a different story.
Yeah, and it got caught in the sanctions, and Canada, Trudeau declared that it could not leave Canada. So it's been sitting on a tarmac for 14 months or something like that. And so now that it's probably going to cost several $100,000, if not over $1 million to repair, Trudeau has gifted it this.
It's an Antonov freight carrying plane, which I don't know how useful that is.
Huge. It's got a 240-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
So if it turned into low income housing, you could hang your clothes on this wingspan. And now Zelensky's got this thing on the tarmac. The Canadians were charging the Russians I can't believe this figure. I think I remember reading $1,158.64 a minute in fines for not taking it off the tarmac. It could be an hour, it could be a day, but it was something absurd. And so the company, it's a private company that owns the plane. They're not going to pay back. They're not going to pay the fine. Of course,
this isn't punishing Russia at all. Yeah.
No, it's just absurd. And what is Zelensky going to do with this big plane on a tarmac in Canada, which he can't move, that doesn't fly? Anyway, that's the ridiculous story.
That's a great story.
It
wasn't the story sorry, I was thinking of, but that was worth our time.
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear yours.
Mine was the flight to Tel Aviv, and basically people, they wrote an article about this because they were outraged because the Ryanair, the Irish pilot said, we are about to land in occupied Palestine. And that was, I think, wonderful. It's making the rounds on social media like today and yesterday. So kudos to that Ryanair pilot.
Did he lose his job yet?
Not yet. It's still fresh.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to come up, but it's difficult.
Yeah,
time.
I hope somebody got that on video. That would go viral. I mean,
at least audio, please. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, that I'd never heard. That, we should probably add as just a footnote is a large deposits of lithium discovered in Iran.
Oh, let's talk about Iran, because that's the other. These people have learned diplomacy. They were the pariahs of the world, sanctioned by everybody. Gone are those days. Ibrahim Raisi, the prime minister of Iran, has flown. He's just arrived 12 days ago to his third Latin American country in Havana, Cuba. So we don't have any news from that place. But in the previous two places, which were Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela, and Managua, Nicaragua, we have plenty of news. He got the Order of Hero Friend from Maduro in Venezuela, also signed another strategic partnership deal. And basically they told each other, the two leaders, we're going to work together in coordination of how to avoid these bloody sanctions and get away from the dollar. This is spreading like wildfire across the globe. The latest is Egypt, basically. All of North Africa is getting free of colonialism. And believe me when I say this, and I don't like to speculate, but France is out of Africa. Anyway, going back to Ibrahim Raisi. So then he went to Nicaragua, met Daniel Ortega, and also another agreements, deals. I'm just going to do a quick cheat sheet of these deals because basically Iran's exports to Venezuela year on year this March were up 416%. So Venezuela can finally have the stuff that the sanctions never allowed it to have, because Iran is a high-tech country. Not many people know this. That's not a desert Afghanistan goat herd country. Iran is a very high-tech country. Basically, they signed enormous deals that's Saudi Arabia and China. Anyway, these deals are being made. So they're even close to the borders of the US. People are resisting the US pressure. Not all places, but wherever these sanctioned countries, they make alliances. The sovereignty.
So these are some of the most independent countries on the planet, right? Independent of Western imperialism, Western hegemony, and they've been targeted for overthrow. And there's been
talk about Cuba. How many years?
Yeah. Investment into overthrowing the government of Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, of course, Nicaragua, and where else did he visit? Was there another country?
So far, that's the three countries where Iran's head went.
So it's great. I mean, these are the primary countries of the anti-imperialist bloc for sure in Central and South America, and then Iran, of course, near the Middle East. They're the bedrock, the backbone of anti-imperialism. So it's great that, the more integration they have, the more they can support each other and develop each other's economies, the better, because the U.S. has embargoes against them all. They're keeping trade from going on between Europe and them, because the threat is if you trade with Cuba, if you trade with Venezuela,
we'll sanction you. Secondary sanctions.
Yeah, exactly.
Slapped on
secondary sanctions. So, and there was a while ago, there was all these tankers, Iran was sending oil to Venezuela, and there was all the talk about, the U.S. was going to interdict these tankers and enforce their embargo against Iran. And so that was some high seas drama. I think Iran eventually, they're right now, they're just trading with impunity. They're sending tankers, they're sending goods, and so the U.S. is losing. Their hegemony is decreasing.
In the tanker piracy, there was a small period when they did some tit for tat. Like, I'll take two of yours and Iran takes two American tankers, basically. Okay, we can do this game. You're not alone in this anymore. And now it's over. They're just trading. They're just straight up trading anything they want. So the most important thing about this is, of course, the main, prediction for any country's development is stable energy. And whatever you want, it's mostly still, I don't like to call them fossil, but it's fuel energy, gas, oil. And who's in BRICS or joining BRICS? Well, 20 countries, but in the alliance in the East, call it SCO, BRICS, a mix of them. All of the Middle East is pretty much in it. That means Saudi Arabia and Iran, massive countries. Venezuela is in it, massive oil country. Most of Africa with their natural resources. I mean, these are the new OPEC, GPEC. These are the guys who will dictate the terms of the upcoming multipolar world, and it's unfolding at breakneck speed in front of our eyes. So I have nothing but optimism, but I guess later we will have to talk about military matters, which aren't going that well. But of course, there's resistance to this from the United States, from the dying hegemon. And I don't know which direction we want to go, and there's plenty we can still.
But the flip has already begun. The brilliance of the negotiation of the Chinese between Saudi Arabia and Iran is already having a salutary effect, because the Saudis are cutting back production, which is raising oil prices, which is helping Venezuela raise cash. Shaniqua, hi.
Hi, Shaniqua.
Hi, Shaniqua.
Which is helping Venezuela raise cash to pay for the production that was there. I'd like to ask you guys what you think of France wanting to join the BRICS.
That's the big story. You want to go, Billy Bob?
You know, before we do that, let's just talk about the naval agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf. Right? They're agreeing on a framework of security, as far as, so to keep the tit for tat tanker, piracy to a minimum. Because that's what's been happening, is the U.S. has been, trying to steal Iranian tankers, basically. And they say they have a justification to do that. And that was causing a response from Iran, a reciprocal response. But with this new framework, where all the countries in the region are agreeing to police, their own region, the U.S. is out. So that's great. The U.S. is out, and that's going to be stability. It's going to be stability, and that's good for humanity, but it's bad for Western imperialism. So completely
agree with you. Wang Wenbin, the spokesperson for Chinese Foreign Ministry, said, "When the shadow of the U.S. influence recedes, the light of peace spreads." And he hasn't been more right than that. Is pithy. Chinese diplomacy is beautiful. And basically, yeah, that's just one part of it. The joint navy, basically coordinated, I think, brought together by Chinese diplomacy. But don't forget Russian diplomacy, because Turkey, rapprochement with Syria is hugely their product. And I know it's still problematic, but Turkey has already said, Erdogan, who's been recently re-elected, already said, Sweden is not getting into NATO in the upcoming Vilnius summit. Forget it, guys. No way. Nope. And India, these are the two players, the key players who dance. We go a little to the west, we go a little to the east. This is Turkey and India. Jai Shankar, who is the third best foreign minister in the world, has done two beautiful things. The upcoming G20 summit, he rejected Zelensky, who wanted to come there, which was beautiful, I think. And then basically, India was invited to join this new NATO, which somehow involves Japan. And he said straight out, no, we don't want to be part of this Western-led military alliance. So these big players from the Gulf down all around India to China, they're resisting. And I just want to reiterate a point that you said about South America, especially Venezuela and Cuba. It's not just coups and let's replace the government with someone friendly, but if that fails, also in Syria, where they call the sanctions Caesar sanctions, where you can't even send building materials because you yourself will be sanctioned, are designed to create starvation, hunger, human suffering, in order for the people to rise against their government. And it is unsuccessful in Venezuela, in Cuba for 60 years. And it's stunning to see these people finally asserting sovereign will of their own to create alliances outside of the US bubble. And that is what we're happening. That's the dawn of the multipolar world.
And you were right to point out what Russia did. We don't want to sell Russia short. What they did for Syria, together with Iran and Hezbollah, I mean, they saved Syria, and they saved, millions of people in Syria, if not tens of millions, but including, the religious minorities, Druze and Christians, from the Western-backed ISIS-style head choppers.
You're very right. And you're right to mention...
Russia deserves tremendous credit, as does China and Iran and Hezbollah.
And you're right to mention the Christians, because I follow Richard Medhurst. His Middle East reporting is, I think, spot on, because he is born in Damascus, Syria. He's in London, speaks perfect English. And because of him, I know that some of the oldest Christian monasteries are in Syria. So it's the birthplace not only of civilization, but Christianity as well, even though there are also,
of course, ISIS destroyed a lot of historical things just because...
just imagine, well, the western part of Syria, which isn't occupied by the US, who are still looting oil, wheat, all that, while complaining about Russian special military operation. That is the place where Christians and Muslims and Jews live together in harmony. I mean, that's just amazing to me.
Syria was a total success story, kind of like Yugoslavia was, and that's why it was targeted.
It was, yeah, exactly.
They weren't
it had to
from
go.
a divide and conquer approach.
Yeah.
So France joining BRICS.
Yes,
that's a good. It's. I mean,
And
I'm a little bit skeptical of I was about to call him Sarkozy. The
Macron.
Macron.
Tiny Macron.
Macron, yes.
I read a great Michael Hudson interview on the Greenville Post last night, and even Michael Hudson, is very wary of Macron, and because he said some nice things. He's saying nice things, and Hudson just says he is a totally owned subsidiary of the West. He is engaging in populist demagoguery when he says, "Hey, Europe needs to be sovereign. Maybe France needs to look after itself," and not. He doesn't mean that. He's saying that for the benefit of the French people, because he's a politician. But behind the scenes, he is, fully owned and operated by the West. But,
in policy-wise, kind of remote controlled. You're completely right on that. I mean, what Pepe Escobar describes him as is the creation, also his party is a creation of basically banking interests. So that is Emmanuel Macron. Just days after Xi Jinping wooed him and he said strategic, autonomy for Europe, days after that, he sent the Scalp missile, which is the French version of the Storm Shadow, British Storm Shadow missiles, to Ukraine. So yeah, he talks one way and basically acts another, which is like exactly the way America does with China, isn't it? Exactly the same.
And what about Japan wanting to join BRICS? And at the same time being wooed as a member of NATO, a potential member of NATO. I mean,
I want to stick a little bit to the Macron story, and we can get on to Japan because it scares the hell out of me, Japan does. Shanika's good. That's a good way to put it. The double agent, Emmanuel Macron and his government. Yeah. Trying to go both ways like Erdogan did for so many years. But I think he's gone east. Now, Erdogan has, not France. So basically, this counteroffensive we've been living through for, 11 days? Yeah, started the 4th of June. The next day, Macron showed up in Kiev in this little surprise visit to check on the progress. And he signed another deal of arms, ammunition. I didn't check the details, but I'm pretty sure it will have to be purchased before, because stockpiles are empty. We can get to that. And then he didn't want to join BRICS. He sent an official request to Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa's president, because it's perceived that that's where the BRICS summit will be, because he wants to attend. I mean, there's talk that it might be relocated to China, but I don't think there's a lot of credence to that, because Putin will come or will not come because of the ICC thing. Doesn't matter. He wants to be there. And you should know that the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is the creation and coordination of China, and the BRICS is very much a Russian project. I know that South Africa later joined it, and India was a founding member, as well as Brazil's Lula. But it is a Russian coordination, a Russian project. So the next day, both Sergei Lavrov and Maria Zakharova of the Russian Foreign Ministry, they said, we have questions. What is your role here? What do you want to do here? Is this, and one of them used it, are you just a Trojan horse, basically, coming here to report back to Washington? So no response has been given from South Africa yet. But apparently they were very surprised at this request. And then there was this other brilliant thing, I think it's Chinese media, Global Times, I read, that we welcome all countries with sincere interests, with cooperation and respect. But we do not take, what was the beautiful word? I don't know, when you trick someone, basically, I forgot the word. We don't welcome tricksters. It was beautiful.
So the caveat was sincere. They wanted sincere.
Yes, sincere and respectful cooperation and development. We welcome you here. Even the United States. That was the end of the article. I wish I had that handy. But yeah, because China is in BRICS, even though it was a Russian project. But that was fantastic from Emmanuel Macron. I don't know what will come out of it, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, let's expand on the Ukrainian situation, though. The counteroffensive.
The big counteroffensive going on
after our break.
After our hard break right now.
All right.
Undoubtedly, Africa is the best tourism destination on Earth. The continent is blessed with the most conducive atmosphere. To feel and enjoy these blessings, join the most productive one-week tour of the continent organized by Daylight Africa every September 2nd to September 9th to see beyond the fallacies about Africa on the mainstream media. Contact us at daylightafrica@gmail.com or call 718-822-5555. Daylight Africa. Revolutionizing tourism industries in Africa.
And we're back, and we're going to pick up the discussion with discussing the counteroffensive in Ukraine and just how well it's going for the Ukrainians and Zelensky. It's a military marvel. Anybody?
Who wants to go first?
Go, Billy Bob.
Okay, I mean, it has not gone very well for Ukraine. What is going to be particularly interesting, it seems that, they've still maintained most of their fist, as it's called, their offensive fist in reserve. So we haven't, so they still have some capability. But what it seems clear to everyone is that, their capability is going to be insufficient to do anything. So the question is, they feel they're under pressure because there's this big NATO summit July 10th, and they need to do something before that to show everybody that they're worth continuing to invest in. But it's become apparent that they will not be able to do anything like legitimate. Like they're not going to be able to make any progress that is going to warrant further investment in their cause. So the big question to me is, what are they going to do? Are they going to do some kind of shady, crazy escalation that, we can't even conceive of? Are they going to do something, out of the box? I mean,
well, they already did one of those.
They did the dam already. But, there's some real expectations before, and they have a lot of time. I mean, it's almost still a month, about 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks they're going to have. And it doesn't seem like conventionally that they're going to be able to penetrate these rock solid, Russian defenses. So the question is, are they just going to go ahead and do a charge of the Light Brigade, World War I style, and just have everybody killed? Like that's not going to engender confidence at NATO. Do they hold them in reserve and come up with an excuse? Well, we're gonna wait for more stuff, and then we'll double the size of this fist, and in about 2 months, then we're gonna go. That's gonna be the fall offensive. Fall offensive, Ben. Get pumped.
Winter offensive, 2025 offensive. I don't know, but here's the thing. I'm going to start from the propaganda perspective, which to me was amazing this entire week. Russian side, Mr. Igor Konashenkov, I think, of the Ministry of Defense. He stands in front of a camera and a map. He says, we destroyed this, that many people, this here. And on the front lines alone, in 11 days, apparently 7,500 Ukrainian soldiers died. This is no joke. This is terrible. But that means 750 a day on just the contact line. This doesn't mention those deep attacks behind enemy lines in the rear. So this is horrific. And just today, I saw one of those rats. I don't know if it was Melnik or Podolyak or one of those aides to Zelensky say, no, we are still in shaping operations or probing mode. But the thing is, it wasn't supposed to get out those pictures and videos that we've seen as those tank columns, Bradleys, minesweeping, Leopards being absolutely destroyed and burning. So let's look at the other side of the propaganda. Here are 3 videos I've seen. Well, let me see. I remember 2. One was Zelensky in his bunker with a lot of military heads. I didn't see Zaluzhny there, and I didn't see Budanov, by the way, but other people. No, nothing but gloomy music and very gloomy lighting. It's like The Fall, like that when Hitler was in the bunker. It's almost exactly like that. The next one was this deep fake, I don't know, let's just call it some sort of technological video of Budanov staring. He's the head of the GUR, the military intelligence, who I don't think is around with us, just staring into the camera and breathing up and down for 10 seconds.
He's alive.
End video.
He's breathing.
I think, if anything, that's a video is proof of death. But anyway, that was the second one. And the third one was basically based on Bollywood cinema. I don't know if you saw these two Ukrainian drone pilots dancing in front of the others and then sending up drones. Those were the three videos I've seen this year from that side. Okay. That gives me a sense of how things are going. But as you rightly say, and this I want to pick up, it's all about that NATO summit in Vilnius, because there are opposing factions at war here. Jens Stoltenberg, America, insists that Ukraine cannot join as is, but I've just seen a European Parliament vote that would officially, it passed by a large margin, officially request NATO invite Ukraine. Zelensky wants to be in Ukraine. Other people are talking about like an Israel type solution, like we'll give you security guarantees for 10 years, but you can't really join us. So it's all about that. And then after all those lives, all those tanks destroyed, which is a huge PR loss, by the way. The developers of 3 weapon systems, including the Iris-T, which is a German air defense system, they've all lost between 5 to 10% in stock value right after this footage came out. So that was catastrophic for the West, not just for Ukraine. So that's not good advertising for you. And by the way, if you're probing, you don't send 300 people, which are sometimes die in one of these attacks, and you don't send the advanced German air defense or the advanced German tanks. That's not probing. So anyway, it's not going well. All of it is happening in a little salient, something called the Verminsky ledge or something. There's 3 villages in there, which I checked before 2020 had like 200 people in them, and they keep changing hands. But in the meantime, based on most military analysts, sane ones like Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, it's about a 10-to-1 attrition ratio on the side of the Russians. It's a horrible second meat grinder, and this is still 10 kilometers away from the first actual defensive line the Russians built, and they built 3. So what you can do in face of that, I don't know. As a final note on that NATO thing, I want to add something that I sent to you the other day, which completely enraged me, and I'm going to have to, hello, Dust James. I'm going to have to quote it word for word, you can sense my anger. Just the original words from the Washington Post. And then we'll give it off to Carlo. This is the justification for this offensive, why it had to start without air defense, without F-16s. Let me read it, and Carlo's up. As he heads into next year's re-election campaign, Biden needs a major battlefield victory to show that his unqualified support for Ukraine has burnished U.S. global leadership, reinvigorated a strong foreign policy with bipartisan support, and demonstrated the prudent use of American military strength abroad. Small side note, Josep Borrell also said there will be no negotiations before the US presidential elections. I didn't know the EU coordinated this well with your country. Carlo.
No, I was just waving to Dust, our truck driver, working man, political activist listeners. But you can keep going, Ben. I'm just flabbergasted at the carnage that's taking place. It just continues.
What Ben is saying is that, it's in order to benefit Biden's electoral prospects. All these kids in Ukraine have to die to benefit the prospects of Sleepy Joe Biden, weekend at Biden's next election. And it's disgusting. I mean, it's immoral. There's words can't describe.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't in a live chat, but I was shaking. I was really furious when I first read those words. Basically, that is the reason for this counteroffensive with no air defense, nothing whatsoever. It's a suicide mission, basically.
I want to stress, it's just going to be so interesting to see what happens in the next 3 or 4 weeks before this NATO summit, because they don't have any options. Like, they still have 75, maybe 80% of this offensive fist that they had cobbled together, and it's apparent that it's not going to do anything. That's apparent to everyone. So what do they do with it? Do they waste it, or do they come up with a new plan? But see, that's the problem. They come up with a new plan for the winter 2025 offensive, and you're not going to have any. Everybody's going to see that as a loss. So I think we're going to see a big loss, and we're going to see some media spin. But even the media isn't going to be able to spin it. Like, even the media is going to have some honesty, which we'll be able to report on about what a big, tremendous, colossal loss it has been for the West, in this counteroffensive.
Let's talk about the media next. I think that's much more, it's telling. So basically, what I saw from the pro-Ukrainian side all week, not just probing, was this celebrating an Egyptian shark, which ate a Russian tourist in Egypt. And now I've seen a petition sent to the Kiev authorities to build a memorial to that fucking shark. That tells you things aren't going well. The next sign was, you remember that the British sent depleted uranium rounds to Ukraine? Well, apparently now the White House, Washington, is going to do the same. I don't know what justification there is for this. Putin already said that what we have phased them out. Yeah, we can use them in exchange if you really want to do this, but they'll probably just blow it up. A bit of breaking news, and I can't really cover it because all the cameras, all the feeds, everything is quiet around Odessa, but something big was hit there last night. Russian ministry says it was a drone manufacturer factory, but it's just eerily quiet. Everything about Odessa has currently been very quiet. And, for a place that's cannibalizing fridges to make rockets, they don't seem to be running out, not fast at all. And who knew, and this is another important point to make, that these guys sent into with the NATO equipment, with the Bradleys, the Marders, and the Leopards, they were the NATO trained, the superiorly trained guys, and dropped like flies. And there's a lot of videos of discontent from Ukrainian soldiers with the shit gear that they got. That's and of course facing a real war with that NATO training.
So, they were sending in, 300 or less, company size attacks, and with, maybe included, 30 armored vehicles, because they don't have the training. They don't have the capacity to do a larger, 500 tank assault is the implication of that. And so they just haven't been trained enough to have the tactics that are necessary to defeat a defensive network like the Russians have put up.
Yeah.
So
who knew that basically a traditional minefield, because half of them were taken out by just mines, anti-armor mines, and that beautiful little drone, the Lancet, is perfectly useful against the supposed wonder weapons, the undefeatable Leopards and all that. It's perfectly working. Putin had a very long speech, very important points in it, but one part that I really loved was, please send more, because what do you think about the Leopards and the Bradleys? Well, they burn very nicely. That's what he said.
And to add to that, for example, the minesweepers or whatever they send in, they were bunching the Bradleys and the Leopard 2s behind the minesweeper, which was making kill shots easy for the Russian artillery, and that's what was occurring. What I find interesting is what I'm calling from Alexander McCorus and Brian Berletic and other people, and that is, and Douglas McGregor and Scott Ritter, that you can't cobble together a force like this with all these diverse
takes years
weapons. They don't work harmoniously together. It's like trying to play a Beethoven string quartet with a electric guitar, one string bass and
completely right,
and a trumpet, and you
have this
a washboard. It's stupid.
This train of mechanics and maintenance behind them, and all of them are different. Even the calibers sometimes are different. Some of the basically, I've seen what do you call them? The howitzers, the shell cannons. They were blown apart because they didn't shoot the right ammunition, or they shot ammunition that was made way too many years ago. It was unsafe. So this cobbling together was a very bright idea.
It's an embarrassment. Whoever came up with that plan ought to be embarrassed, but they're not. They're shameless. And it's not just an embarrassment. It's a bloody, murderous embarrassment. And I wish we could hold these people accountable, but maybe.
Absolutely, these criminals.
Maybe in a few years.
Maybe in a few years, yeah. Maybe the day will come. I do want to talk to you about Tucker Carlson and the U.S. elections first, but just to round this off.
Let's do that last. Let's do Japan into NATO.
Okay.
I had a few things to say, a few thoughts.
Go.
But let me, just one brief thing about Ukraine is that let's not, pussyfoot around this. These motherfuckers are sending a lot of expired equipment to Ukraine, and that can't be used for anything that's worthless, just to make money. And one example, the Swedes had developed this anti this anti-missile. I don't know much about military stuff. This hardware. It's like a truck with a trailer on the back of it, and they sent Ukraine 16 of them because they built 16 of them and they put it on the open market to test about to get more orders from it. And it was such a piece of shit. Nobody in the world, not in the fucking world, ordered one. So they just sent them all to Ukraine. So they're all just getting blasted out because they're a useless piece of shit.
It's the same with the Super Iris T. The German army, the Bundeswehr, does not have them. They sent them straight to Ukraine. You know?
Yeah, all our old, worn out, obsolete shit here, Ukraine.
Look, with traditional weapons, this has already been lost. I'm going to say this because I just read today that 9,000 rounds of artillery shells we sent from Norway and Denmark. That's half of what Russia shoots in a fucking day. Okay, are you serious about this? After they got, and we'll switch to Japan very quickly. Japan sent TNT so the US could keep making these shells. That was last week. Now we have this very old sort of ammo sharing agreement, which will allow Japan to replenish the US stocks of these 155 millimeter shells, which will obviously be sent to Ukraine. That's how low the storages are. And I just want to focus on the former Slovak Prime Minister's words, who is called Peter Pellegrini. He says, arms warehouses across Europe are empty and will take 5 to 10 years to replenish them. So people who are thinking this will last for 10 years and NATO is going to join, I don't know what sort of arms and ammunition they think they're going to join with, because Europe is in an irreversible slump. Mostly Germany, where Habeck just warned that we have 2 days left of the grain deal, by the way. After that, Russia will not renew it if it doesn't get fully implemented. December 31st this year is when the gas deal, the gas trading through Ukraine to Europe ends. And Habeck warned that the German industry might come to a halt, not slow down, might have to be stopped. And when people start freezing, that's this winter. That's Europe. And in the meantime, above Europe, we have Eurofighter 23 going on, which is the largest ever NATO air exercise. And apparently there's 2 or 3 Japanese fucking AWACS systems and refueling things are going on. So there's 2 countries historically which were never a good news when they remilitarize, and they are both remilitarizing, and that is Germany. Olaf Scholz just committed that he will fulfill his 2% GDP commitments to NATO, and Japan, which can now build and export weapons. Isn't that fantastic? And of course, having this office in NATO. No, we're not joining in NATO, but we'll have this little regional branch in Tokyo, which is always the first step in this salami tactic of bringing someone in. Thoughts on that?
So, the U.S. learned its lesson about using its own troops, right? So it's very expensive. The healthcare, even if you just, even though only 5,000 people die, and 50,000 get injured, that costs a lot to maintain that. So the proxy war. So in Syria, we utilized proxies against Russia and Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainians are the current proxy, and maybe the Moldovans, maybe the Polish. And then we'll just work our way west, country after country, and utilize them as proxies. But against China, we're going to use the Taiwanese. So the Taiwanese are the number 1 proxies. Number 2 proxies are going to be the Japanese and the Filipinos.
Yeah, and South Korea. Yeah,
South Korea, exactly.
That's it. They still have some presence there, not anywhere else in the world, but still there. But the Yugoslav model will not work on a place like China or Russia. Just won't.
So I just hope that, the people in those countries can see as clearly what's going on as I can here. And I think they can. And so I think that this hope that the U.S. is banking on of using everybody else's blood to further their interests isn't gonna gain traction. It's not gonna fly with the rest of the world, because they realize, hey, China's not the enemy the U.S. makes it out to be. Like, we could just work with China. And that's just so let's hope that the populations demand that their governments don't suicide themselves.
The majority of the world, and this is increasing, sees it clearly. And I'm going to quote one of these great Indian commentators, either S.L. Kanthan, who's wonderful, or M.S. Badra Kumar, the guy behind Indian Punchline, said that there's 2 ways to becoming the world's best. 1 is becoming the world's best. 2, getting other people to fight to keep them down. That has clearly been the US tactics since World War II, and it's beginning not to work, and I couldn't be more glad for that. But in recent news, we have seen Tucker Carlson appear 3 times on Tucker on Twitter. The latest numbers I've seen is episode 1 went to 105 million and counting, and I think we're at about 75 million for episode 3, which came out after Fox News sent a cease and desist order saying you're in breach of contract. You can't do this. And he said, I'm just going to do it. In the meantime, we have two electoral candidates like Cornel West joining in, RFK Jr. joining in, and Biden's fading sanity. While on his birthday, which was his 77th, I think, Mr. Trump got arrested in this indictment on a second time. By the way, shout out to Xi Jinping, who is 70 years on this day, 70-year-old on this day. Under your leadership, China has risen.
Happy birthday, Xi.
Happy birthday, Xi.
So
your thoughts,
humanity.
We still have 10 minutes. I really wanted your native US thoughts on the elections. Who would you sincerely vote for? I'm really curious.
Carlo, let me just do my basic, approach towards electoral politics in the United States is that, it's a sham. And I'd make the decision that I'm not going to legitimize this corrupt system by voting in it, because I don't believe my vote matters. I believe they count the votes. And so even if good people and I wouldn't say good, even if somebody I could mildly support, barely, I shouldn't say, like RFK. So I would never even conceive of voting for Trump. RFK, not JFK. So RFK, before he went all pro-Israel and anti-China by getting Gordon Chang is his China advisor. Before I learned about that, I could mildly, get on board. He's no communist. He's not, he doesn't understand, and he's not articulating reality as I believe it exists. But, he's going to make a hell of an improvement with the status quo. So I could think of supporting him. But the problem is I'm just not motivated to vote in an electoral system like in California, where, it doesn't matter. If you get the majority party gets all the electoral college votes in California. So there's really no point. The system is so rigged. It is just not a democracy. Oh, shoot. We're going to go on YouTube, huh? We're going to get banned from YouTube. So that's not true. Some people think.
Allegedly.
If I phrase it like that, allegedly, all of the electoral college votes in California go to the party that, wins the majority. So no matter who you vote for, it doesn't matter in California. And they have 1,000 ways to rig this and get who they want. And the other way of rigging it is just it takes billions and billions of dollars to campaign and to get on the ballot. And so unless you're backed by the billionaires, you're just never going to even get on the ballot. People won't even be able to vote for you anyway. So the Green Party, Cornel West is with the Green Party. I could
switch allegiance is very fast.
He's a bit of a milquetoast anti-communist, but he's a strong liberal. And with that, I could get behind him. But he's not going to get on the ballot in many states. He's not going to stand a chance. He's not viable. So I just withhold I don't endorse this system with my legitimacy, and I speak out against it. I say it's not a democracy. What we have is a capitalist oligarchy. It's a dictatorship of capital. Stop pretending that voting helps or matters. And when more people get on board with that reality, then maybe enough people can, vote to make a difference. But right now, people are deluded and they think, oh, we have a democracy. We got to save our democracy. We can't let, Trump supporters storm they'll destroy our democracy. Well, we've never had a democracy to destroy. So who the fuck cares?
Yeah. I completely agree on every point. I have my little nuance to add, but I really want to hear Carlo first.
I totally agree with Billy Bob too. I used to joke, the U.S. isn't a democracy. It's 32 political parties shy of a democracy. It's a one-party system. I mean, it makes the caricatures of communist countries look like open societies that George Soros and Karl Popper could never dream of. And so I totally agree with what he's saying. But Ben and I were talking a little bit about this before the show, and it's tangential. But I live in Washington, D.C.
Belly of the beast.
And we hear all about different systems of apartheid. Of course, the big one being South Africa and currently Palestine. But Washington, D.C. is an apartheid city. The people that come here, a lot of the people like myself who are natives, we consider the people that come here the worst people in America. And they're elected. It begins with elected officials. You are sending your scum here, and we're sick and tired of it. because these fucking people control the money. And what follows them is the K Street lobbyists, the Beltway bandits, all the Silicon Valley people, all the gun makers, all the military industrial complex. You want to come here, I'll take you around the Beltway and point out all their tall towers to you where they're stealing your tax money. It's true. It's true. When
it's like a mini America, right there.
They're doing it. So, and the people who live here have benefited in small ways. I mean, they work for the federal government. They work in the post offices. They work in the menial jobs. So there's a fairly large middle class, and it's primarily an African American city. So there's a substantial middle class, or at least used to be, among the African American community. But
it's a compressed U.S.
It is an apartheid city, and we resent the way we're treated by these shits that come from the outside world. That I'm not talking about you guys, but that Americans send here through this so-called sham electoral process. And if I don't vote, I've never voted. And if I hear one more asshole tell me, look, people died for that vote, I would just say, that's bullshit. They didn't die for that vote.
I respect. We got just 4 minutes. I want you to be able to respond to. I'm just going to say this. RFK Jr., whose vocal cords are fucked. Basically, that was already a big signal to me. But then he went on to this anti-Israel thing. He threw Roger Waters under the bus. That was a signal for me that I wouldn't be able to vote. If I were cursed with U.S. citizenship, I think. Sorry, Cornel West went with the Greens, and then he said, I want to talk with brother Barack and sister Michelle Obama. That was another signal to me that right now, you can castrate me all you want. I would vote for either Jimmy Dore 2024, Garland Nixon 2024, or Trump if available. Because if nothing else, they oppose this sham for what it is. Marxist-Leninist, we don't usually get into electoral politics to win, but to expose from within. And that should still be a task. So I think it's still legitimate, even if Donald Trump is a horrible person, a managerial thing. I mean, he almost made peace between, North and South Korea. That I have respect for him for that. He would end the war in Ukraine. He said it himself in 24 hours. You know, in times like this, that might be enough for me. Castrate me if you like. We still have 3 minutes, but that would be if I were in America, I would.
But nobody asked him how he would get peace in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, nukes.
And he doesn't really know. He has no plan. It's bullshit. It's hot air with him.
It could be populist demagoguery, just like Macron saying
he's
things
too lazy. He's a fat, lazy fuck.
He repeatedly
it comes down to.
He repeatedly says
do any real work.
He always says the quiet part out loud. We're there for the oil. Yeah. We're getting the oil. For that alone, I think I would vote for him.
So and that's what I wanted to touch on if I could get a minute. So I mean, I laid out my overall approach to it. But now what we want to see happen is we want to see dysfunction, right? We want to see internecine war, within the capitalist class. We want to see the liberal ruling establishment that right now has the power, and they plan on, destroying Russia, then going after China, and in their pursuit of global hegemony. We want that liberal establishment weakened. We want to see it, divided among itself and infighting. So, and we want to see the people that support Trump and Trump's base. We want to see them wake up to realize that, hey, you believe a whole bunch of things that aren't true. Like you believe that we have a democracy, we don't, and Trump's the proof that we don't, because they're not even going to let him run. In fact, when he ran and won, they didn't even let him govern. They went out of their way to keep him from doing anything. So this isn't a democracy. You don't have a democracy. So, they need to appreciate these facts about reality, and that's going to help build a movement that can actually, make a difference. But we're at the ground floor. We have a long way to go, as a country to develop any kind of sane movement to help, bring sanity to the world and to the Western imperialism, essentially.
But we have to circle back to Tucker Carlson here.
Okay.
If you listen to his Twitter things, he equates things that don't equate. He picks on LGBTQ people.
Yeah.
He picks on COVID people.
I'm with Joe.
After talking about substantial things like the war in Ukraine being a sham, okay? And then he does that other thing. That's Hitler. That's Nazi speak. That's fascist speak. That's the nascent fascist speaking.
I disagree, but we will end on these beautiful words of Carlo.
You got the last word, Carlo.
You did.
And that's a good, I mean, you make a good point, you know.
Yeah,
That
and I'm
definitely,
glad that we can have discussion if we disagree.
Yeah.
That's great. So thank you.